breakdown tonight. Crusaders coach Scott Robertson is with us live from Christchurch. What on earth is happening across the ditch? Nick McArdle weighs in the state of Australian rugby. And they are fan favourites, so should the Sunwolves stay? All of that and more tonight on The Breakdown. Kia ora, hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, tonight it is all about Super Rugby. We're going to look at 2020, the 25th year of this competition. We're going to look in depth. We're going to look at the teams that have performed on the weekend and some of the great action. There's always plenty of talking points to come out of it. Your panel tonight, my panel tonight. Kane Hames joins us once again. Justin Marshall has come up for the first time in 2020. And Sir John Kirwan, he is ready. He is loaded. His gun is ready to go. And he's velveted up.
Look at that.
He has velveted up. That means he's got something he wants to say. Marshall, you got to sit back on the weekend.
I did.
Relax. Watch the games from afar. You watched Super Rugby. What did you make of the weekend and week 3? Was it a step forward for the competition?
I think it was. What's been really impressive in the first few weeks is sometimes it takes time for this competition to get going. The players are a little rusty. The quality of rugby has been outstanding. The South African teams are playing really well. Australia is still a little bit of a struggle.
We'll get to that later on.
We will, but the New Zealand teams are brilliant. So it's actually been entertaining, high-quality rugby. You're used to seeing a lot of knock-ons and stop-start.
Exactly, I totally agree with that, Marsha, because normally the first couple of seasons, first couple of weeks, you get those knock-ons, the contact they're not used to. But boy, especially the New Zealand teams have really hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Kane, and at this time of the season, right, you need sides to step up. Already some sides were under pressure, wanted to try and get results, and maybe we saw some of the big guns flex their muscle.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, just to touch on what the boys were saying, first week definitely all over the place, and I think it started to sort of happen last week. A lot of the teams starting to raise their level, and it happened quite quickly, and then you're right, the big guns seem to be showing who they are now.
It'll be game on in week 4. Let's look at Super Rugby in 60 seconds.
The Hurricanes were at full force in the capital with Geordie Barrett taking control. And he had good support from Nani Laumape.
Barrett goes across field. Oh, and it worked out.
And a hugely impressive Ben Lamb. But the Sharks had some fleet-footed fellas too. The pace of South Africa's backs impressive across the board. Impressive too are the crowds in Japan, with Damien McKenzie a fan favourite as the Chiefs remain unbeaten.
Good line, Damien McKenzie. Outside in, out to the left side. It's Sullivan.
In Canberra, the Highlanders continued the poor start for Aussie teams with their last gasp win.
Here's the drive. Did he get it down? Yes, he did.
But in South Africa, the Stormers ended their drought against the Lions.
Sergio Peterson, inside ball. Ruan, no!
Unbelievable scenes down here, Owen.
Stormers win, and they break a 5-year hoodoo.
And speaking of hoodoos, the Crusaders have pushed theirs into a 6th year with the decisive thrashing of the Blues. As the Blues struggle to do the basics, like winning the ball.
They take it flat up on the line. Now Moanga carving through and in for the try.
Richie Moanga, all class in the Crusaders' 11th straight win against the Blues.
An outstanding performance from the Crusaders against the Blues. Lucky enough now on The Breakdown. Scott Robertson joins us. Most coaches, well, what are they doing? They're in front of their computer. They're studying for the next game. You're at Sumner Beach, chilling out. Beautiful night in Christchurch. Razor, let's talk about the review you've done of the performance of the weekend. Was it a big step forward?
Yeah, it was a big step forward. We left a lot of points out there too. We didn't come away with the bonus point, which we were disappointed with. Made a lot of line breaks and didn't convert them, so always a bit to work on, but a set piece was strong, and the young guys, you know, a lot of debutants this year, they've had a chance to play 3 games in a row, are really performing.
Yeah, Champ, it's good to see that you're still working really hard on your sort of mere race there in Sumner by getting all the right spots to be interviewed, but I'll briefly tap onto my question as well, which is, look, you've won it 3 times on the bounce. The opposition analyse you to within an inch of your life. How do you stay ahead of the pack?
Are you just constantly trying to get better, and how can you evolve? I think if you focus on what you've done the year before, you're going to be behind. So look, we try and be innovators if we can, but also do the basics as best we can under pressure, and probably just keep enjoying it, making sure the boys are really fresh, trainings are really on point, and just keep evolving. Yeah.
Razor JK here, mate. I see there's a nice low coming down the coast, so I'll be getting some waves in the next couple of days, so it'll be nice for you to relax. But is it actually nice for you having the Chiefs sort of leading the way at the moment? Because always you've got the sort of target on your back as the team to chase, but you know the Chiefs are putting themselves out there. Is that nice for you guys for a change to sort of look and go, wow, you know, this is great competition for us?
Yeah, good looking. Welcome to my backyard. You obviously have seen a few extensions that I've just sort of made. The boys are just playing with the ball in the background here, so yeah. Look, I do appreciate you coming out to Sumner. Normally we have to fly up to Auckland and do these things, so it's a great innovation. But, look, I suppose so. Look, the game, the second round game against the Chiefs, you know, it could have gone any way. There's a couple of calls didn't go away just before half-time around the scrum, and a few breakdowns we lost, and it was that close. And definitely makes you check what you're doing and just keep reevaluating and keeps you hungry. A nearly lost like that, and it just showed the desperation and probably the keenness of our group to perform on Saturday night against the Blues, who, you know, had come off a great win.
Yeah, Razor Kane here. Hey, you talked about it just then, hunger, and that's what I'm really interested in. How do you keep your players hungry after a good couple of years of success?
I want players to have their mentality that they're going to be All Blacks, and they have to perform in the Crusader jersey, and then we can celebrate their success with us, by playing well and then going on to higher honours. So having a real strong mindset of understanding why they play the game and what they're trying to achieve, and help them just keep tapping back into their childhood dreams about, you know, being successful. And as I mentioned before, we've got an expert coaching group as well, that make sure that the boys get as much information, much feedback, and just like a real class group, all of us can coach a number of different aspects of the rugby game, and then just come in and, yeah, like I said, have fun and get the balance of rugby and life.
Razor, you're always talking about evolving, you're always talking about getting better, and you talk about your elite players, the balance. Though this year, interesting for me, you've obviously had to transition more players into leadership role because you've lost a lot of it. Okay, how do you get that balance right, and who have you given those responsibilities to?
Firstly, Scott Barrett's doing a great job. Look, he's coming, he's leading in his own way, firstly by playing extremely well. You know, he's one of the premier locks in the world, and importantly plays well, and he's also leading off the field. He's a very detailed man, loves to know or have a good understanding across all the board while we're playing, how we're playing, and cover kick strategy along to line-outs, and when he calls our line-outs, and he's got a great relationship to Richie Mwanga. But then it just sort of filters down, you know, with two great vice-captains he can call on with Dave Havili and Cody Taylor, and we've got a leadership group of 8 and sometimes up to 10, because we bring 2 young guys in each week just to upskill them. So all the guys understand themselves and what sort of leaders they are, and how they can input into the team and help others and grow them. So got some great young men that are really confident to lead and perform.
Razor JK again, mate. 3 derbies in a row. I don't know if that's ever been done before, but does that change what you do? We all know how physical it is, takes longer to recover from them. Does that change this week with so much intensity, not so only physically, but also mentally?
It can do. The first thing is you never talk how tired you are. You just talk how you got to re-energise and get excited for the next challenge. Well, we love these derby matches. It's a big part of the season, and it's a big part of these guys performing at the highest level in these biggest matches. And the Highlanders always like coming up to play us, and it's going to be a good crowd. And it's the first time we've actually got a chance to play in Christchurch. But I think you mentioned early on about the quality of the rugby and the cohesion that boys, you know, you want to keep the same team together as long as you possibly can to get those combinations and cohesion. If you start making too many changes too quickly, you can lose that. You can lose your rhythm, and so we're mindful of. We've got a 4-week block, and then we've got a bye, and then another 5-week block, and then a bye. So make sure we give guys opportunities, but also keeping the combinations.
Mate, wanted to tap into obviously something off the field which is quite relevant leading into this season. The branding there is very evident. Big challenges for you and the organisation. Have to commend you on what you've achieved. You've got a few champions coming in, former Crusaders this weekend. It's probably the perfect storm to play the Highlanders as well. So off-field, transition onto on-field as well. And has the public received the new branding and the team this year really well?
Yeah, they have. Marcia, it's obviously, like I said, the first time we get to run out on Friday night with new tohu and the jersey on. And, you know, everyone's really excited. But to connect with our past lineage and, you know, yourself included, it's been such great Crusaders before and set up the opportunities for these guys to work off the back and set such a high standard. And, you know, with the management coaching group and players, it's a great chance to connect back to your legacy and be really thankful and grateful for what they've done and how much hard work they've given into a jersey. And it's always special to reconnect, and especially when you're going into a bye week.
Yeah, Razor, a lot of people talk about culture, and I sometimes think we have our own little meaning for it. So I went straight to Google, and it says the ideas, custom, social behaviour of a particular people. Now, every team has a culture on paper. They write it down, they do a whiteboard session, they accept it, and they sort of half accept it. I don't think the Crusaders do that. How do you and your team and your management make sure that what you write down, everyone accepts, everyone does?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question, Kane. Deep thinker, I like it. For us, it is that. As culture is about your people and their behaviours and rituals and how you act and keep each other really honest. And there's some tough conversations, and a lot of people have to be vulnerable. So the first thing is you create an environment. My job as a head coach is to create an environment that people love coming into, so they feel connected and they can share and they can discuss points and be honest. And it's a place that you feel really, really connected, and so you're going to give. And there's a lot of you go to a wedding. There's a lot of the players at the wedding. And coaches, and there's just a really good connection, and you live all the off the field stuff like the, people when they get married, when they have babies, when there's anniversaries, when there's birthdays, all those things you've got to celebrate just as much as you do as the rugby. So, and also we do a lot of theming, so we connect it to a story that people can bond with, connect and be inspired by, because my biggest job is to, I know the rugby side of it, it's a chance to inspire and have a collective vision for the team.
The perfect answer, Razor. I'm going to ask you this then. The fact when you get to that point where it seemed like last week against the Blues, you guys were desperate to get a win. There seemed to be that motivation on the back of the loss. Everyone talked the backlash. But all of a sudden, it was your defence that found another gear, or that sort of belief. To me, is that, we talk about it when we were players, is that a reflection of attitude? And does that give you your marker about where these guys are in terms of their game?
Good question it is. Defence is also always the heart and soul of your team. It shows how much you care, and we do a lot of work of understanding on the individual side of it and what we're trying to achieve. And sometimes the structure doesn't matter, it's all just about the mindset. We code a lot of scramble D, and when there are line breaks and putting their heads on the ball, just a special mention to Mitch Drummond, is one of our highest turnovers, jacklers in the last season, and just the ability to probably endorse and show and praise those guys for that hard work as part of the collective review for us, and we love it. Yeah.
There's no doubt, Razor, you guys have returned to your very, very best. You've caught on your experience. Congratulations on last weekend. Looking forward to seeing you in Christchurch when the Highlanders come to town. Thanks, mate. Appreciate your time. They've been looking for a halfback for a long time, Marshy, who can turn the ball over at the breakdown. They've finally found one.
Or pass.
Well, or pass. Or, that's exactly. Or kick. Doing a whole lot of things. Clean out the old ruck. Or two. Great. Thanks, Razor, for joining us. Well, of course, Kirsty Stanway, she's returned to Thursday night kickoff. So we're born in the next best thing, if not the best thing. Bernadine Oliver Kirby, come on down, bring on the rugby news, the Super Rugby news.
Goodness me. Look, there could be a new member of the royal family, it seems, with, you know, Harry and Meghan legging it. There is a vacancy, isn't there? But I'm not sure this is the title that Dane Coles really would want. He won't be thrilled with it. King of the cheap shots. That's what he's been called by South African rugby fans on his late tackle on the ground to Sinele Nhamba. They reckon it deserved a red card. Well, the TMO, he dealt with it at the time. The ref kept his cards firmly in his pockets. Caused a bit of handbags at 5 metres though, didn't it? A little bit of that in the match actually. Far more entertaining than the streaker who left his pants on. Who's teaching the kids these days, really? Right, a clean sheet for the Chiefs though, undefeated after 3 rounds. And they took a very big risk, leaving some very big name players at home. And Gats is going with that again this week against the Sunwolves. Last week's Sunwolves, this week's the Brumbies. So he's resting Boshier, he's resting Alaimalo, and he's also resting Weber. So they continue to win minus the big names. It really shows the depth and the breadth of that squad. Hands up, who thinks the Aussies are going to make a playoff? Anyone? Well, really, across the ditch, what they want to do is be playing each other, because then you're guaranteed, aren't you, an Aussie victory. The Aussie Super Rugby sides are 0 for 6 against foreign teams this season. Why are they just so awful? Look forward to hearing the panel's views on that one. It was a happy homecoming for the Hurricanes. However, on Saturday, they ran in 5 glorious tries against the Sharks. 2 of those to Ben Lam, who was in absolute blistering form. They now face a bye weekend, but is that a good thing after their long haul opening 2 rounds, or could that stymie their momentum? That is the big question. You hope that that role will keep going.
Yeah, absolutely, Bernie. And when you go into a season, you're not sure when you go to a bye week exactly what you need. They got some great momentum, playing some really positive football. Number of teams, though, out of the weekend, guys, got really important wins. And I'm going to go to my Highlanders, actually, first. Yeah. Let's go to the Highlanders because they play the Crusaders this weekend. Lost the first game at home against the Sharks. It takes to the 83rd minute, JK, to get a win against the Brumbies. In the context of their season...
With all due respect, they were poor week 1.
Well, yes, they were frustrated.
That win on the weekend was so important. 83rd minute, and going into a derby, going against the Crusaders, Marshy, you need all the confidence you can get.
Again, it was dogged though, wasn't it? It wasn't a great spectacle. It was an ugly match, but the ugly ones are the ones you need to win. You look at the...
Oh, I don't know, if you love a line-out drive...
Season. Yeah, exactly.
You love a line-out drive.
They got 3 tries for Brumbies.
Big this weekend line-out drives, weren't they?
Yeah, massive.
Not with the Blues. But I won a line-out to get a drive.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them in a moment. But in the context for the Highlanders and the way that they played, they've got the Crusaders coming up. I mean, if you're going to keep yourself in this competition, away wins can be so valuable. That, to me, kickstart maybe their season. Yeah,
well, and one of the special things of the weekend is who went over the line. Te Ariki Ben Nicholas' first real shot at Super Rugby. Came on last week, did really well. Came on this week, did awesome. And then... Nuggie, Aaron Smith at the end talked about it, you know, that they're starting to find a lot of trust, and they needed that. Bye week, they had a bit more time. Week 1, not so good, and then week 2, finding a little bit of trust. They need that, and they need that especially going into the Crusaders.
Yeah, I'm just really impressed with the way that the resiliency they had to show. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they go to the Sunwolves, leave some key players at home. They just got the job done, JK. They're just travelling nicely. Gats is going to rest a few players this weekend in regards to... He's rotating players already. You talked about it before.
We haven't used the word rotate for a while, have we?
No.
But the thing...
Well, he said it, though, didn't he?
Yeah, no, but talking to Gats over the summer, Marsha, and you'd like this, he was really happy with his whole squad. Yeah. His whole squad. He felt that across the board, like, it doesn't matter if you've got 7 or 8 superstars and then the rest of them are struggling to make it, but he was happy with his whole squad. So the way Gats works is he gives you a rest, but you don't want the rest, Marshy, because you're worried about the guy taking your position.
And the areas you're talking about that he's got strength and depth is brilliant. Fullback, midfield is very strong. First 5, obviously, bringing Cruden back. Halfback.
Yeah.
So those are areas. And the loosies, how good have they been? So all of a sudden he can create that, I guess, rivalry within the team where you want to be on the field.
I wasn't sure that the Hurricanes were going to be able to go around the world, Kane, come back to Wellington and beat the Sharks. When you see and have a look at that game, are they maybe just a little bit better than everyone thought?
Definitely. Week one, everyone watched that game. They weren't happy with what they saw. If you're a Hurricanes fan, you're not happy with 0 against the Stormers on your first trip, and you think, that's not what we want, that's not what we want, that's not what we expected. And then they sort of turned it around against the Hagiwatis, and then they came back against the Sharks, and I thought the Sharks were good. I thought the Sharks were looking okay. Maybe I was tricked. Maybe the Highlanders were just woeful. And then they come back against the Hurricanes. Hurricanes put on a show and took them apart.
Yeah, okay, so right. That last sort of minute try against the Aguades is fundamental to give you that momentum, because you lose 2 in a row. Like the Blues, you talk about the Blues, they're going overseas. They don't win this week, they're under the pump. And that's what the Hurricanes were facing, and yet they just got better very quickly, because after the first game, but actually on the weekend, and Ben Lamb, I mean, you know, talking about left wings, Lomu, talking about, you know, Julian Sevilla, he's like the guys that he's beating are fast, man. And this guy's big and fast.
2 years ago.
Taken him a while to mature, Marshy.
Yeah,
hasn't
it has, and obviously be consistent, but he's shown consistency now in a good couple of seasons, been talked about in All Black rumours as well, so look, he's just a quality finisher. Boy, we're blessed though, aren't we, with what we've got on the outside flanks.
But I think it was a massive game for Jackson Garden-Bishop, because the question marks were always about who was going to be the first 5 of a rock-star backline. And that's what they have. You have Vince Arso, Nani Laumapi, Ben Lamb at the back. Geordie Barrett is in outstanding form, kicking his goals from everywhere. So the formula is there for this team to go out and be successful. And for Jackson Garden-Bishop, a very, very good night at the office. Well, tactically, the game continues to change and evolve, but what we have seen over these few weeks is the fact how important the kicking game is to all sides in Super Rugby. We asked Glenn Jackson to have a look at it in depth.
Week 3 of Super Rugby is done and dusted. What I want to look at this week is the kicks and play. 2 reasons I feel New Zealand teams are kicking. 1, they want field position earlier. Number 2, there's huge line speed out there. If we look at this table, 2018 to 19 to 20, you can see the increase of teams kicking in New Zealand. One of the huge reasons for me is line speed, creating attacking kicks. We can look here that Crusaders set up a wonderful 6-man line option for a kicking play. We pause it there, we've got 2 Crusaders running around the blind side. This is to try and stop the blindside winger and their 9 from leaving their place behind the line out. We then go to the wide view. Their open side winger has done a wonderful job in keeping the width, which then holds the Blues fullback. All in all, what this creates is huge amount of space in behind a fast line speed of the Blues. Wonderful little kick from Moanga, who could have easily been a try if it wasn't for some fantastic defence from Mark Talia, who reads the situation brilliantly, gets back in the space and kills the Crusaders option. The second clip we're going to look at here is the Hurricanes under pressure through line speed. Really good setup from the Sharks defensively, and when Perenara passes this ball, the Sharks bring huge amounts of line speed to put Garden-Bishop under pressure. This leads to a pretty 50-50 kick, in my opinion. Gets his kick away, and the Sharks could have easily got this, run 55 metres and scored to tie the game. He misses it, Ben Lamb catches it, and he runs 45 for the massive game-deciding try. Really good evidence of 2 situations where line speed is affecting why New Zealand teams are kicking more and more in this year's Super Rugby.
So it illustrates you have to have a kicking game, and it's got to be short, it's got to be wide, you've got to have the options and the accuracy. But JK, there is a risk with it, and sometimes it can come and get you. But if you've got the talent and the skill to try and execute it, it's worth the risk sometimes.
Well, you have to have the talent and you have to have the skill in the modern game. Mickey Byrne was a big believer of breaking down defence, not only with ball in hand, but with the kicking game he brought in, the short kicking game, the kick pass as we know it now. And it went well for the Hurricanes, but you've actually got to do it, because what you're trying to do is manipulate the backfield, aren't you, Marshy? I mean, the 25 kick up from the halfback, they're all to manipulate the backfield and make sure your attack, when you do run it, is manipulated. So you've got to take those risks, and it comes down to the accuracy of the guys that are kicking it. Not easy.
And that's something, if you don't have it, Marshy, you're not testing the defence in enough ways, and we know if you don't stop line speed, there is just no way to play your game.
And it's a big problem for New Zealand rugby. the South Africans have effectively
Mastered
done it
it,
against
really.
us, the Lions did, and we really struggled. But that is a way to break that defence down, even if you're showing those outside guys and you've shown them that, they've watched the content, and then you execute something else with a pass. Yes, it's very important, but it is a 50-50. It's a
And there was a couple on the weekend, Locano Arm, if he'd managed to get his hands on it. You're going the other way. They're almost like a 14-point try. We've held off on it. It's time now to talk about the Blues from Friday night against the Crusaders. They have had a loss against the Chiefs. They went to the Waratahs and won away from home, and then they've beat the Crusaders. Where do you start? Let's start up front then, Kane. You look at the performance of their forward pack and their execution on the weekend. How much better do they need to get, and do they have the capabilities?
Yeah, well, you hope so. It's a part where it's just a big part of your attack. You can kick, as we talked about, you can carry, you can pass, and then what you can do as well, you can hold the ball in at scrum time, you can hold the ball in at maul time, and use your push part of your attack. But when you can't win it, you can't use it.
And their line-out on the weekend misfired, and it's so disappointing, JK. And I know you're disappointed from the weekend, but when you earn the opportunity to get the ball...
I shouldn't have been as this. I went home and my wife said to me, "You're not coaching anymore. Why are you so disappointed?" Because the mistakes that Perifeta, he was amazing with the ball in hand, then you kick it out on the full. You know, you can't make those mistakes. You cannot lose that many line-outs. And they call it in the All Blacks... You know, we've spoken about it often, Marshy. You know, red head versus blue head. They went into red head. Red head means you just completely lose your mind, forget your line-out calls. The Crusaders had, you know, a couple of blocks up against them. The Blues weren't even jumping in the end with their block was clear. So they went into red head, which means you're under pressure. You're under pressure to try and win it, and it just snowballs. But they should not be making those mistakes. That's what was so disappointing.
When you're 13th in line-outs, you know, and you miss those opportunities, Marshy, to launch and you look at their team, and particularly the experience they had in that forward pack, you would think that they would be able to hit their targets. Mind you, they're up against a very good Crusaders team, but there's no Sam Whitelock that's there, who's been the mastermind behind a lot of their play. So how frustrating is it if you're Liam McDonald when you believe you've got the talent and it's not out there at the moment performing?
Very frustrating. And a lot of the difference between the New Zealand teams is stability. And stability means, as Kane was alluding to, and JK, line-out being good. Functional scrum, that you've got a platform to work off. Because our skill set in this country is so good, everybody's got the razzle-dazzle X-factor players. So everybody's equal in that department to a degree, some slightly more than others. So you need the foundation. And what the Blues... And with that foundation is the drivers. And the drivers need to have a clear head when they're under pressure and make good decisions. And I just feel that when the Blues come under pressure, the Crusaders said, let's squeeze them. Keep squeezing, keep squeezing, keep squeezing. And when it comes down to the crunch, we'll win that battle, the mind battle.
Exactly. And when you're watching the Crusaders, you see that, right? You see them mount that pressure. The frustrating thing for us, I'll take you through a scenario. I think Hoskins Satutu does a great turnover while the Crusaders have been mounting an attack for about 10 minutes. Penalty. Kick it down to the 10 yards. Your ball. You can get that ball back. You can either kick it into the corner and have a good attack. You lose that line out, Crusaders get it back, and you're back on your own line like that. That is devastating for your confidence when you need confidence. And that happened 5 times.
And if you're talking about a line-out and you're going to South Africa, you know that is so much a part of their game. They've got to go and take the Bulls on in Pretoria, not easy, then travel south to the Stormers. They're going to need to call on experience. You're going to need to call on guys who have been through a journey to get to this point. And for Tony Lamborn, his way to the Blues has been a storied, well-travelled road.
Do you want me to hop in with you?
Tony Lamborn, wife Abby and son Jack couldn't be happier playing in Auckland, partly because of what it took to get there.
Oh, you can do it.
Lamborn's arrival in the Big Smoke at 28 years old has realised a dream the rugged flankers chased since leaving school at 16. An elusive Super Rugby start.
I remember running out. There was a few tears rolling down my cheeks, and they were happy tears though, you know. I was just really proud of myself and proud of my family for sticking it out with me.
If there are many words I could describe Tony with, resilience and determination are definitely 2 really big ones. I'm immensely proud of him and the hard work and the grit he's shown.
Shortly after running on for the Blues against the Chiefs in round 1,
On the outside, and in for the try is Tony Lamborn.
his tears turned into the trademark try celebration of Lamborn's mates.
We love our hunting, our pig hunting, and that's just the boar tusks.
Lambourne's turn of speed has been turning heads since growing up in Ashburton. He was into athletics, but was convinced to try rugby, even if he didn't follow the national game.
I remember Richie McCaw coming to a mid-Canterbury, like an under-16 camp, something, and I had no idea who the guy was, and he was the All Black captain. And after I figured it out and I'd seen him on TV, I was like, this guy's my idol.
But he didn't have a meteoric rise like McCaw. He played 50 games for Hawke's Bay and had 4 off the bench for the Hurricanes in their 2016 title run. They didn't keep him on though. So Lambourne, whose dad is American, shifted to the USA to play for San Diego and made the test team. An offer from English club Newcastle seemed like his big break, but it coincided with the news his mum Sari had breast cancer.
I knew I had to be home. I had to be around my mum, my family, and I'm just really grateful and blessed to have my mum still around.
A contract from Southland in 2018 let him be close to his mum.
Well on now, Tony Lambourne. Nice and patient.
Go, go, go.
Lambourne's mixed fortunes have made him a rugby nomad, and that uncertain life isn't easy, especially for a family.
Having our family unit together is really important. It's a priority. We'll go wherever Tony needs to go. It does make for challenges in terms of me and a job and things like that. You know, you make it work for things that is really important to you.
As the 2019 World Cup approached, the Lambournes faced a stern reality.
The last 2 years have been really hard on us, and so it's been a real challenge. And I mean, if Tony didn't get a contract after the World Cup, he was faced with having to go back building, you know.
Luckily, Blues forwards coach Tom Coventry picked up the phone before the tournament started in Japan. Coventry loves Lambourne's abrasive play and experience and agreed to continue contract discussions following the World Cup.
Hello, Tom.
After watching him play against England first up, the call couldn't wait.
He called me like literally 30 minutes after I got into the shed after the match. My response was, oh, well, what kind of happened to calling me after the World Cup? But
he confirmed that to us in that first match, so we didn't beat around the bush with him.
Now Lambourne is starting to live his Super Rugby dream, and his family wants to become a fixture at the Blues.
I'd love to settle in Auckland. I'm just grateful that Tony just, gets to play rugby.
I'm really loving my time here in Auckland. I love this team. If the coaches are happy to sign me on for another 5 years, then I'll do it, This has been great.
Welcome back to the breakdown. Well, the face of Super Rugby will be very, very different next year as we say sayonara to the Sunwolves. Let's take a look at that journey. Well, Super Rugby announced its newest recruit in 2014, and 2 years later, it was officially konnichiwa to the Japan-based Sunwolves. The only Asian-based team showed patience, perseverance and a real willingness to learn, claiming wins over teams like the Reds, the Rebels, the Blues, the Bulls, the Stormers and, yes, even the Chiefs. In 2018, the axe would swing on the competition, but the Sunwolves continued to run with the pack, and they managed to avoid the cull. But March 2019, it was announced that 2020 would be the 5th and the final season of Super Rugby. An almost inconceivable thought, given the huge success of the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan and, in fact, its team. There is chatter that there could be another league for the Japanese teams, but with Sanzar refusing to back them financially and the Japanese Rugby Football Union closing up the purse strings on the yen, that may just be a hopeful prospect. Well, the Sunwolves are world champions in one aspect of the game, the fans. Their stadiums are always full. What it does now is pose the question, do we need them more than they need us? And given the Aussies have got a pretty poor showing this year, will they be a big loss to the competition?
It's massive, Bernie, absolutely massive. Thanks for giving us the background and story, because for me, I think this is something that is critical to our future here in New Zealand. Gents, I want to ask you, how does Sanzar capitalise on what World Rugby gave the opportunity to Japanese rugby? A Rugby World Cup, the Sunwolves, 18,000 fans in the weekend, JK. How do we make the most of this opportunity with them?
Well, let's put it clear straight away. They don't need us, neither does the Northern Hemisphere. we need Japan. I believe that the Sunwolves, no one wanted the Sunwolves in Japan. The clubs don't want Sunwolves. What we need to do is to bring in their big clubs. Their big clubs are spending between $15 and $30 million a year on their rugby programs. You know, the Coca-Colas of this world, NEC. So we need to bring them in to whatever our competition is. Sanzar need to show some courage and move quickly. They don't traditionally move quickly. They go on, you know, television contracts. But now we need to sit down. I think we should bring 3 or 4 of the best sides from over there into our competition. We can get rid of an Aussie side. they're not going too good. We just need to make it work to bring them in. We need to bring them straight into the championship. Let's bring them straight in.
Do they have the depth for that, though? Like, if you sort of dissipate that talent, and you know, when you correlate the Sunwolves together, they are stacked full of foreigners. Really are. Now, so if you all of a sudden mix and mingle that in with a lot of Japanese players and the odd foreigner, can they compete in Super Rugby against the big Super Rugby teams?
They'll be like the English Premiership, Marshy. So the big companies will just pay, right? I also think that they'll pay for the big
Kane's leaning
guys.
in a bit close to me because I know he's got something he wants to get out. He wants to let it out. So, big fella, well, I'll give you the floor because honestly, he was coming in a bit close, you know. So let it go, let it out.
Yeah, buying technique, it's no good. No, I was just going to add in because you're right, because the companies are the main part of Japanese rugby. The Sunwolves aren't Japanese rugby. In fact, they struggle to find a coach. They struggle to find support from the Japanese clubs. You call them clubs, they're actually companies, of course. So it's a big branch of the company, baseball, rugby. So the Sunwolves aren't Japanese rugby. They're stacked full of foreigners. So you're right. It's trying to find a way, either one, to get the clubs involved, entice them in. You're right. We don't. They don't need us, we need them, we need to be part of that money. And you've actually said something in the break, JK, that I thought was quite interesting too. What if there was a relationship between New Zealand Rugby Unit and Japan where our players could go over there and they're still allowed to be contracted?
So, there's a question for you.
Yeah, but what we need in this competition and for the growth of our game, I agree with all of this. And obviously there's a great deal of money that would be beneficial to New Zealand Rugby, but what the competition needs is a competitive competition. So it needs to be that you're tuning in for every game, every week. There's something on it. And I don't know whether or not bringing a lot of Japanese teams in will do that.
That's the intention if you think about the changes that are being made for next season, the fact the reduction of a team, a single round robin, so that's 13 games that we played. So they're thinking about reducing it, less derbies. I think it will reintroduce some of that competitive juice between the two teams. It gives to me, I think, a light bulb moment then. Maybe, if you're talking about change, and you talked about it, is it time maybe we consider that the Sunwolves remain, keep that connection, keep building that bridge, and maybe one of the Australian teams falls out? Because reality is their performance in 2020 has been poor, and it's been poor for a while. Nick McArdle is joining us from Australia, someone who knows all about Australian rugby. And Nick, welcome on the show. We're suggesting possibly that maybe the Sunwolves remain and an Australian side drops out of Super Rugby. But let's go back. Give us your state of the nation of the game in Australia right now.
In a word, struggling, and it has been for some time. Guys, thanks very much for having me. Real pleasure to be with you. But yeah, the game is struggling here, and that's part of the discussion. Do we reduce once again after having lost the Western Force just a couple of years ago? Do we get rid of another team and go back to 3? And at the time, there was even talk about maybe keeping the Force and merging the Brumbies and the Rebels. That's still on the table in some people's minds anyway. But I think the problem here in this part of the world at the moment is even deeper than that. I mean, just today, the AFL announced that they've got a yearly profit. They've just announced a yearly profit of $48.5 million. Profit. That's after all the cost of running the game. That's profit. And that's the 3rd year in a row that they've got somewhere near $50 million. So that just gives you a taste of what we are competing with, both in AFL, both in rugby league. Now, you guys are in this wonderful position that you've got rugby as your #1 sport. You know, it's a religion. We know that. Our talent is being spread amongst 3 sports. So what that means is we have to make the absolute most of the talent we have, and I'm not sure that we're doing that just at the moment.
Next, JK here. I mean, I rang my Aussie mate on Monday morning because I knew he was going to get in about the Blues, and I got into him about the Waratahs and said, it's going bad over there. He said exactly that. He said, Mate, what you don't realise is that we get the 4th pick. So rugby gets the first pick over here. Over there, we've got the AFL. We've got all these people doing a great job. So what is actual Australia Rugby Union trying to do to compete with these AFLs? They've got, coaches in the schools. AFL should be dead, and yet it's growing in profit, it's growing in crowds. It's an amazing marketing tool. Are rugby actually showing some initiatives?
Well, the issue at the moment is that all that money with AFL, I'll give you an example. I'll come to the answer in just a moment, but I'll give you an example. In Sydney, where I'm based, a lot of the GPS, the private schools, which have been traditional rugby schools, and over the past few years, the AFL has gone to them and they say, would you like to play AFL? And they initially say, no, we're a rugby school. And they say, well, what about if we pay for coaching? We'll maintain the grounds. We'll provide the equipment. We'll provide the officiating on a weekend. And those schools go, would you do that? And they say, yeah, we'll do that, absolutely. So that's how they're getting into the traditional rugby system, which was once sacrosanct, no longer. So even those schools now are opening their doors to AFL. That's where part of the problem lies. So, that was the last bastion, really, of players being available to the rugby system. So what's happening is that we have to be smarter with our coaching, and that leads us into a whole other argument about the lack of forethought or the lack of planning that's gone into Australian coaching over the years. Why do we have a New Zealand coach coaching our biggest province in the Waratahs at the moment? I mean, I'm not terribly. I think it's horses for courses. You pick the best man for the job. There's also a feeling that why have we got Dave Rennie just about to start as coach of the Wallabies? The reason is he was the best man for the job, and everyone's comfortable with that. Except that why was he the best man for the job? He was the best man for the job because we haven't put the resources into the coaching structure, the coaching pathways. There was nobody ready. Nobody was ready to take over the Wallabies. That is an indictment on the Australian system at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nick, that you talk about coaches, because that's what I wanted to talk about. And I was going to ask about who are the up-and-coming coaches that are going to lead Australia into the future, but you've already touched on that. So who are the coaches lost to Australia Rugby at the moment that probably need to be brought back?
Well, they've done that. And all credit to him in terms of Dave Rennie. So Matt Taylor has come back from Scotland. Scott Wiseman has come back from being Eddie Jones' assistant. But they're just two of a number of coaches who are overseas. Nick Stiles at the moment, who, he had a rough trot at the Reds, probably wasn't given the resources and the opportunity that he really needed. There was some talk that he would come back from Japan and perhaps be the forwards coach. He's since re-signed with his team in Japan, so that won't be happening. But it is good to see those coaches coming back into the system. But in terms of maybe the next cab off the rank, and I'd like to see him involved in the national system in some way over the next few years, and that is Dan McKellar. You guys would have seen and watched with interest what he's been able to do at the Brumbies. He was a club coach in Brisbane just a few years ago and was given the opportunity at provincial level and has come through and has had a couple of good years with the Brumbies. He's probably the shining light at the moment in terms of the next cab off the rank at national level. That issue about coaching, that is something that just in the last couple of years the Wallabies set up and the national body's become really aware of. And full credit, I think, to Rod Kafer too, who was in the system at headquarters over a period of time. And that was one of his big projects was, come on, guys, let's get some sort of pathway in place so that we can see in 5 or 10 years' time some of these coaches coming through. And the playing ranks, I've got to say, I know it doesn't show this year in terms of results. We're 0-6 against non-Australian sides. But give these young guys some time. They're a great crop, perhaps the best crop in almost a decade of young players just starting to come through out of that schoolboys and under-20s successful team that's been there over the last couple of years. My hope is that in a couple of years, those guys will be the cream of the crop in Australian rugby and maybe we'll be seeing a success. Question is, does the rugby public have the patience to watch those guys develop, cop some poor results and see better in the future? That's a big question.
Nick Marshy, I'm going to go all the way back to the start. And when you did say one word starting with S, I didn't think you were going to say struggling, so well done on that. But in a nutshell, do you feel that from week to week there's not enough depth to sustain the teams that you have? That players are probably playing Super Rugby that shouldn't be. Ultimately, you need to correlate all that talent, get the team stronger so that they're pushing each other and Australian rugby gets stronger. Then you add a team in the future when you've got that talent base from those under-20s coming in.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that premise, Marshy, at all. I think our situation, and you could argue yours is the same as well, having lost a lot of players overseas post-World Cup. Difference being you guys have got the talent and the depth to probably cover that so that it's not so obvious. I made a list when I knew I was coming on tonight of some of the guys who've left after World Cup. Kepu, Foley, Laleafano, Genia, Pocock, Coleman, Sean McMahon should still be playing for the Wallabies. He's playing in Japan at the moment. Now, the thing is that those guys are at the end of their careers. They've done their time in the Wallaby jersey and they've gone offshore and are now going to pump up their super over the next couple of years. But the two that were really difficult to watch go are Rory Arnold and Samu Kerevi, who should have been the types of players that the Wallabies build their side around for the next couple of years. They were really tough losses. So, yeah, in terms of that post-World Cup exodus, it's probably distorting things just at the moment. But I don't disagree with the premise that maybe that is worth looking at, shrinking to find some success and then growing again. But in the light of a broadcast negotiation that's going on at the moment here, which is a very controversial and much talked about broadcast negotiation, that would be pretty hard for any prospective broadcaster to cop, I think. And that reduction in money, so there's that vicious circle that's happening, the reduction in money would be very difficult for the game in Australia to cop in terms of the revenue to run it.
Nick, I knew if we got you on the show, we'd find out about everything. And we did. We got the whole lot, which is fantastic.
Fantastic,
the
mate.
Perfect picture. We're going to get in touch with you a little bit later on in the season, I'm sure. Thank you so much for coming with us and giving us where Australian rugby is at right now. Plenty of food for thought. Well, it's, of course, another big week for Super Rugby coming up, and we're going to get a flashback. We're going to look back in time. We're going to look at Eden Park, the great John Olomu coming up against the Bulls in 1996.
Around the blindside, Spencer almost finds a gap. Rickelman plays the supporting role. Tonu'u. And Lomu almost in the clear. Shrugs off a couple of tackles, carries a couple more. Oh, that's an impossibility. You cannot score from there, but he did. Jonah Lomu.
Amazing. The sheer strength of Jonah Lomu there, if you've ever doubted it, that was just amazing.
Welcome back to the breakdown. Well, a big road trip for the Blues. They are heading to Pretoria to take on the Bulls. Then they've got the Stormers the following week. You look at this matchup, it's going to be huge for them and where exactly the Blues are going to be at when they return home. But we're going to talk about, I think, in the evolution of the South African game. You look at where they've got to. They are World Cup champions, but already the first 3 weeks, Marshy, I've seen a lot of talent, emerging talent, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. Some of the guys that Nick McArdle's talking about, but they have no problem performing in this competition.
No, they don't. The big evolution for me, for them, has been, and seeing this talent come through because of it, they have changed their mindset in the way they are playing. 3 or 4 years ago, they were playing such negative rugby with talented players, kicking orientated, weren't prepared to play in their own half. They're now ambitious, they've got talent, they're wanting those players to get their hands on the ball rather than chase it down the field, and they are a real threat. They've got a good core group of young players coming through as well. They are looking dangerous.
I remember us having a conversation after the All Blacks ripped the Springboks apart in North Harbour, how the Lions were playing the type of football that we thought they could play, and the Springboks weren't. Yep. And then what happened, they've actually mixed that with the increase of these incredible athletes coming in, and now they can play that both games. I mean, they showed that in the World Cup, and they've just kicked on from that confidence.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because that's how their schools play. You know, we've been over there before quite a lot. Their schools play like that. A lot of their clubs play like that. But they always wondered and they always questioned, why did it never rise to the top? Why did they close down and play the negative rugby that they did? And I'll tell you one of the big changes that I've loved seeing, the Q word used to be brought up a good number of times about 5 or 10 years ago, quota. That does not get listed anymore because a lot of these black players coming through are special and they're genuine and they deserve to be there. And we have a ton of South African viewers, and be proud of what you've done with these players. You see Afalele Fasi, Madosh Tambwe, Makazole Mapimpi, they're all genuine threats. And of course Makazole Mapimpi scored the first ever South African try in the Rugby World Cup final. And then you have the very inspirational Siya Kolisi. Nelson Mandela in 1995, you started something very special. Be very proud of that legacy.
And to me, that's the first generation, Marshy. This is the first generation that's been given the opportunity to go and play. They've actually got 6 professional teams, a couple of teams playing up in the Northern Hemisphere. So all of a sudden, we're seeing that balance right. And it's not to say they're one-dimensional. The fact that they can go and play any way that they want to play. Super Rugby, what do? They throw it around. They get to the international level, they run a Rugby World Cup, doing it the old-fashioned, hard-nosed way. For me, they've got the balance right.
Yes, absolutely, totally agree. And their mindset's changed as well. Like, they used to be a little bit afraid of playing New Zealand teams because they didn't think they could compete with them skill factor-wise. But now they know they can. They're super ambitious. The big can of worms, I guess, we'll debate at some other stage, will be, you know, they are still bringing people back from playing in Europe and the UK, and they are adding. Like what Aaron Cruden's done in New Zealand. He showed that he can go away and still compete at the top level. Do we consider that one day?
Experience counts for a lot, there's no doubt about that. It's a big weekend of Super Rugby in front of Justin. I've got to ask you, JK, can the Blues win away from home?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't say that off air. You did not say that off air. He didn't say it off air.
They'll talk about those shows on the kick-off on Thursday night with Kirsty and the team. The Highlanders and the Crusaders, gents, they are going head-to-head down in Christchurch. Which way you got it?
Well, I have to go Highlanders.
Crusaders.
And I absolutely love that game when we played the Crusaders. Highlanders.
Sorry, what? Say it again?
Crusaders.
Crusaders all the way. You know where my heart is at. There's no doubt about it. I'm looking forward.
But pick someone.
What's that?
You know where your heart's from. Pick someone.
It's the Highlanders through and through. Going to be a great contest. Make sure you join us. Orange Theory Stadium. It is all on Friday night.